I still remember the moment I collapsed on the treadmill. It was a Tuesday morning at my local gym, the same gym I'd been religiously attending for over 6 years, pushing myself through the same punishing workout routine that had become my identity. At just 32 years old, I prided myself on being the embodiment of health discipline, counting every macro, tracking every step, optimizing every supplement. Yet there I was, crumpled on the rubber mat, my heart racing erratically as concerned faces gathered above me. The paramedic's words still echo in my mind. Your body isn't failing you. You're failing your body. That emergency room visit revealed the truth my carefully constructed health regimen had been hiding. Severe adrenal dysfunction, hormonal imbalances, gut permeability issues, and the early markers of autoimmune disease. How could someone who did everything right end up so metabolically broken? The answer is what I'm sharing with you today. The profound health mistakes I made despite the best intentions, and more importantly, the transformative lessons that finally led to genuine healing. My first and perhaps most damaging mistake was believing in what I now call the more is better fallacy. Like many Americans passionate about health, I operated under the assumption that if something was good, more of it must be better. This flawed logic permeated every aspect of my regimen. If 30 minutes of high-intensity exercise was beneficial, surely 90 minutes must be 3 times as effective. If intermittent fasting for 16 hours showed promising results, extending it to 20 hours would amplify those benefits. If a certain supplement showed positive effects at the recommended dosage, doubling it would surely fast-track my progress. What I didn't understand then was the biological concept of hormesis, the principle that many beneficial health interventions follow a J-shaped curve, where right amount creates positive adaptation, but too much triggers damage. Exercise physiologists at Stanford University have extensively documented this phenomenon, showing how excessive training without adequate recovery transitions from a hormetic stressor that builds resilience into a chronic stressor that breaks down systems. The clearest evidence came from my cortisol measurements, which showed the classic pattern of what endocrinologists call HPA axis dysregulation. Essentially, my stress response system had been pushed beyond its adaptive capacity. My morning cortisol levels were consistently below reference range, while evening levels remained elevated, creating the perfect storm for sleep disruption, inflammation, and metabolic dysfunction. The lesson wasn't to abandon exercise or fasting or nutritional supplements. It was to respect the profound wisdom of biological thresholds. The body doesn't respond linearly to inputs. There's an optimal zone for every intervention, beyond which the benefits not only diminish, but often reverse completely. Finding that sweet spot requires something I had completely overlooked: listening to my body's signals rather than imposing my will upon it. My second critical mistake was falling prey to what researchers call nutritional fundamentalism, the rigid adherence to a single dietary paradigm that becomes almost religious in its intensity. For me, it was the low-carb, high-fat approach. After reading compelling books and studies on the benefits of ketogenic eating, I embraced it with the zealotry of a convert. I meticulously tracked my macros, celebrated my rising ketone levels, and silently judged those still consuming pasta or fruit. What I failed to recognize was how this dogmatic approach was creating subtle yet progressive imbalances in my body. After 18 months of strict ketogenic eating, my thyroid function began to decline, evidenced by falling T3 levels, rising reverse T3, and the classic symptoms of cold extremities, thinning hair, and fatigue despite adequate sleep. Female athletes following similar regimens have documented disturbances in luteinizing hormone, follicle-stimulating hormone, and estrogen, the hormonal cascade known as relative energy deficiency in sport, or RED-ES. The wake-up call came from an unexpected source, a functional medicine doctor who specialized in women's hormonal health. Instead of prescribing more supplements or further dietary restrictions, she introduced me to the concept of metabolic flexibility, the body's evolved capacity to efficiently utilize multiple fuel sources. Research from the University of California has demonstrated how forcing the body to rely exclusively on one metabolic pathway eventually compromises cellular energetics and stress resilience. The healing began when I incorporated strategic carbohydrate refeeding, initially just 1 meal per week, eventually expanding to a more balanced approach that varied based on activity levels, hormonal phases, and even seasons. This wasn't a failure or giving up, it was honoring the complex, dynamic nature of human metabolism. My energy returned, sleep deepened, and paradoxically, the body composition I had been chasing through restriction came naturally when I stopped fighting my body's inherent wisdom. The third mistake represents perhaps the most pervasive yet under-recognized pattern in modern health optimization, what psychologists call compensatory health beliefs. This is the unconscious tendency to justify poor health choices in one area because you're excelling in another. My version went something like this: I can handle chronic sleep deprivation because my nutrition and exercise are perfect. Or my high stress levels are fine because I'm meditating and taking adaptogenic herbs. This mental accounting simply doesn't align with biological reality. Research from the Sleep Research Society has conclusively shown that no amount of perfect nutrition can fully mitigate the metabolic damage of chronic sleep restriction. Similarly, studies from the American Physiological Society demonstrate how even the most carefully designed exercise program cannot completely counteract the inflammatory cascade triggered by ongoing psychological stress. The body operates as an integrated system where each element interacts with and depends upon the others. The hierarchy of health fundamentals, adequate sleep, stress management, hydration, nutrition, movement, connection, doesn't allow for substitutions or trade-offs. I learned this lesson the hard way when blood tests revealed elevated inflammatory markers despite my perfect diet. A clear sign that my chronic sleep debt and unmanaged stress were overriding my nutritional diligence. The solution wasn't adding more supplements or further refining my diet. It was addressing the fundamental imbalances I had been compensating for. This meant establishing non-negotiable sleep windows, implementing true stress management practices, not just more stress reduction activities that paradoxically added to my schedule, and learning to value recovery as much as performance. The fourth mistake reveals the dark side of health tracking technology, what researchers at MIT have termed measurement fallacy, the erroneous belief that what we can easily measure must be what matters most. My life had become dominated by quantifiable metrics: steps, macros, heart rate variability, ketones, sleep cycles, all neatly graphed in multiple apps that I checked compulsively throughout the day. These numbers had become not just data points, but my definition of health itself. What this obsessive measurement missed were the equally important but less quantifiable aspects of health: my intuitive relationship with food, the quality of my social connections, my sense of purpose, the subtle feedback from my body, and my psychological relationship with health itself. The metrics had become the ends rather than the means, creating a distorted version of health optimization that paradoxically compromised my well-being. The turning point came during a digital detox retreat, where all tracking devices were prohibited. Initially, this created intense anxiety. How would I know if I was making the right choices without data confirmation? But as days passed, something remarkable happened. I began relearning the language of my body's natural feedback systems. Hunger and fullness cues became clearer. Energy fluctuations became informative rather than problematic. Sleep quality was assessed by how I felt upon waking, not by a score on an app. Research from Harvard's Department of Psychology has documented this phenomenon, showing how excessive external measuring can actually diminish our interoceptive awareness, the crucial ability to perceive and interpret internal bodily signals. In reclaiming this innate capacity, I discovered a more sustainable, intuitive approach to health that no algorithm could provide. Upon returning home, I didn't abandon technology entirely, but I fundamentally changed my relationship with it. Tracking became periodic rather than constant, serving as a useful check-in rather than a daily obsession. The metrics became servants to my well-being, not its master. This shift alone reduced my cortisol levels more than any supplement or breathing exercise had previously accomplished. I want to speak directly to you watching this video right now. Have you noticed how much of modern health advice focuses on optimization while overlooking balance? How the pursuit of perfect health can paradoxically lead to practices that undermine your well-being? The wisdom I'm sharing comes not from theory, but from the humbling experience of having to rebuild my health from the ground up after pushing sophisticated health practices to their breaking point. If you're finding value in these insights from my mistakes, consider subscribing to this channel. Unlike typical health content focused solely on optimization tactics, we explore the nuanced reality of creating sustainable well-being in a culture of extremes. The comments section below is open for your experiences. Have you recognized similar patterns in your own health journey? Your story might help others avoid the same pitfalls. The fifth mistake may be the most surprising. What healthcare researchers call intervention bias, the tendency to focus on adding things, supplements, practices, therapies, rather than removing harmful inputs. My supplement shelf was a testament to this error, dozens of bottles promising to boost everything from mitochondrial function to neuroplasticity. I was spending nearly $600 monthly on supplements while ignoring fundamental stressors and toxins in my environment. The shift in perspective came through an environmental medicine specialist who suggested a simple experiment. Before adding anything else to my regimen, focus exclusively on removing the most significant stressors. This meant addressing previously overlooked factors, replacing chemical-laden household products, installing proper water filtration, improving indoor air quality, minimizing artificial light exposure, and creating boundaries around work and technology. The results were remarkable. Within weeks, many of the symptoms I'd been trying to supplement away began to resolve naturally. My sleep quality improved without melatonin supplements. Energy stabilized without stimulants. Skin cleared without specialized protocols. The principle became clear: the body has extraordinary healing capacity when obstacles to health are removed. Sometimes, the most powerful intervention is not what you add, but what you take away. The sixth mistake was perhaps the most culturally reinforced, equating discomfort with effectiveness, the no pain, no gain mentality that permeates fitness and health circles. I prided myself on pushing through signals of fatigue, pain, and hunger, viewing these as weaknesses to be conquered rather than important communication from my body. This approach culminated in a series of overtraining injuries and ultimately in the collapse that began the story. Sports medicine research from Stanford University explains why. The body's discomfort signals aren't obstacles to progress, but essential feedback mechanisms that protect optimal function. Pain, fatigue, and hunger aren't weaknesses. They're sophisticated evolutionary adaptations designed to maintain homeostasis. Learning to differentiate between productive challenge and counterproductive stress became a crucial skill in my recovery. This didn't mean avoiding discomfort entirely. Appropriate hormetic stress remains essential for growth and resilience, but it required developing a more nuanced understanding of different types of stress signals and responding appropriately rather than pushing through indiscriminately. The seventh and perhaps most profound mistake was one I couldn't see until I'd addressed all the others. I'd been using health as a form of control in an uncertain world. Each carefully measured meal, precisely timed workout, and optimized sleep environment gave me the illusion of perfect control in a life that felt increasingly unpredictable. Health had become not just a means to well-being, but a psychological coping mechanism, one that ultimately backfired physically and emotionally. Psychologists call this health anxiety, or in more extreme forms, orthorexia, when the pursuit of health itself becomes unhealthy. The pursuit of control through increasingly rigid health practices created a stress burden that undermined the very health I was trying to optimize. The paradox was complete. My attempts to control my health through increasingly strict regimens had become the greatest threat to it. The healing journey required not just physiological interventions, but psychological ones, learning to cultivate what psychologists call tolerance for uncertainty and self-compassion. Working with both a functional medicine doctor and a psychologist specialized in health anxiety, I gradually developed a more balanced relationship with health practices. This meant embracing flexibility, occasional imperfection, and the fundamental truth that health serves life, not the other way around. Perhaps the most valuable lesson emerged from integrating all these experiences. True health isn't a state of perfect optimization, but a dynamic capacity for resilience and adaptation. It's not about achieving some idealized set of biomarkers or adhering to the perfect protocol. It's about creating the conditions that allow your body's innate intelligence to function optimally while building the capacity to respond appropriately to life's inevitable stresses and challenges. The metrics that matter most now aren't primarily quantitative but qualitative. Do I wake up feeling rested? Do I have stable energy throughout the day? Can I engage fully in activities that matter to me? Do I recover appropriately from stressors? Is my mood generally positive and stable? Do I have the capacity to be present with those I love? These questions reflect a more integrated functional definition of health that honors its complexity. This doesn't mean abandoning science or evidence-based practices, quite the opposite. It means applying them with wisdom, context, and respect for biological individuality, rather than as universal prescriptions. It means recognizing that health exists not in extremes, but in finding the right balance for your unique biology and circumstances. The journey from collapse to recovery has transformed not just my physical health, but my entire approach to well-being. The mistakes became essential teachers, revealing that true health emerges not from rigid adherence to external protocols, but from learning to work with, rather than against, the body's inherent wisdom. It comes from balancing scientific knowledge with intuitive awareness, optimization with sustainability, discipline with flexibility. What would your health journey look like if it were guided less by fear, control, and external validation, and more by genuine self-care, intuitive wisdom, and a deep respect for your body's innate intelligence? The answer might not fit neatly into a tracking app or protocol, but it might just be the key to the sustainable well-being that extreme approaches often promise but rarely deliver.